Last year, UNICEF released a report where young people from around the world shared their experiences and perceptions of mental health. And across these 13 countries included in this report, young people spoke about the numerous challenges to having good mental health. And this ranged from bullying to the impact of COVID-19 to just not being able to access the mental health care they need. A young person from Malawi shared, "When you see that you don't have anything at your home and there is no food, you cannot ask for transport money from your parents just so you can go and share your problems with someone. It just makes you say, I'll see how to deal with this alone." And mental illness is currently the most undiagnosed and undertreated of all the health conditions amongst young people globally. Currently, at least 1 in 10 young people around the world are living with a diagnosable mental illness, and many, many more young people deal with poor mental health daily. But young people have also been extremely clear about the many ways that they're looking after their mental health and the many opportunities that exist for strengthening their mental health. And this includes having at least one trustworthy adult, just one trustworthy adult in their life makes a difference, having stable friendships and safe spaces like Waves for Change, where they're able to be themselves. A young person from Jamaica said, "I think school kind of helps most of us children because sometimes we can get away from the toxic household and we can actually be with friends, and that makes us happy." And creating policies and laws that promote mental health, supporting caregivers to provide nurturing care, and implementing school-based and community-based mental health programs are among the most effective promotion strategies for countries, regardless of their income status, to improve youth mental health. Importantly, across developed and developing countries, young people share the difficulties around speaking about their mental health, with many just opting to keep their emotional and behavioral challenges to themselves. And young people cited stigma about talking about mental health and the lack of listening or understanding from adults as being the 2 leading causes. A young person from Switzerland said, "I think we have a hard time with mental health as youth because we just don't talk enough about it, because people are scared to talk about it. Maybe if we could express ourselves without feeling judged or assaulted, maybe then we could make some progress." And a young person from Indonesia shares, "When I was younger, I used to be bullied, and then I would usually tell my parents about it. But as the bullying went on, they ended up telling me to solve my own problems." And so what's clear is around the world, as adults, mentors, advocates, decision makers, we have to do better to listen to young people about mental health. And how can we do this? Firstly, by making it clear to the young people in our lives that there is no right way to ask for help. There are no magic words, there's no secret passwords to get help. And when a young person says that they're struggling through their words or their actions, we have to pause, we have to listen, and we have to see what is going on here. And you might not know how to respond in the moment, and that's totally okay too, but you've got the responsibility to seek out what resources exist within your community and online about how to best start this conversation to demonstrate your support. We have to ensure that we set up the right conditions for young people to open up. In South Africa, about 65% of young people who've shared having some form of mental health issue report not seeking help, 65%. We have to model what it means to talk about mental health. We have to ask for help ourselves for our mental health. We cannot expect young people to know the importance of taking care of their mental health if we do not do the same to ours. Secondly, what we've seen is that when young people feel like they can share their feelings and experiences, it makes the world of difference. This is both individually, but also at a country level. By listening to the guidance of young people, we as advocates and decision makers get to understand what we need to do to improve mental health care. For example, tackling poverty so that young people do not need to choose between food and transport to their psychologist, making sure that the house is not a toxic place that children need to leave to find refuge elsewhere, and investing in strengthening meaningful and stable peer-to-peer support. Today, we have the privilege of listening to a panel of young experts from around the globe who will be sharing their experiences on how they are shaping mental health care advocacy and services for young people. And I invite you all to be present, to be engaged, and to reflect throughout on your part on improving mental well-being of young people in your life. Thank you so much again, and I would like to pass on to Tanya and Haley van der Walt. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shane. It was super insightful, and I think thank you for sharing it, specifically highlighting some of the core elements I think the panel will be discussing at length. And please don't take for granted the keynote speaker. Definitely the sharing that you've done is super. I'm going to hand over to our program manager, Haley van der Walt, who will lead the panel for us. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great start to their Wednesday. My name is Haley van der Walt, and I work for Ways for Change, and I am Ways for Change's program manager. Just to introduce myself a bit, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm from the little city in the Eastern Cape called East London. But this panel and webinar is basically about the young people that we have on this panel, and basically creating this opportunity to bridge the treatment gap for the mental health stigma that we do have in the world, and specifically in this country and other countries that we'll be sharing about. So I'd like to now hand over to our panel to introduce themselves. And just before they do that, I'd like to mention that you can post questions in the chat and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So over to the panel to introduce themselves. Sandra, you can begin.
Now it's just about the who's going first. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jean-Andre Davids. My pronouns are he and him. I work for Ways for Change. I am a site manager at one of the 5 sites that Ways for Change has. The site that I am situated at is in Muizenberg, Cape Town, South Africa.
I think I'll go next. I'm Venetia Gordon. I am from SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and I'm the operations manager as well as the university liaison, and I also manage a few of the dedicated projects. Thank you. I'll give it over to Ahmed on my left.
Thank you, Anisha. Hello, everyone. I extend my warmest greetings to all the attendees. I'm Ahmed Nisar. I'm joining from Kabul, Afghanistan. I'm founder of Education for All, which is a grassroots youth-led organization that focuses on providing quality education and mental health services for young vulnerable children. And some of the roles that I had in terms of my advocacy work was being a global youth reporter and external reviewer for World Economic Forum, and the SDGs that I focus on is good health and well-being and quality education. And I pass it on to Emo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the happiness webinar, I'll call it, because it's been a tough time, and I know it's a tough time right now in America and some parts of Europe, or if not the whole of Europe, because there's a terrible heat wave at the moment. I'm hoping that it gets better for them, and that is something that would really affect their mental health, because people are already thinking, oh my goodness, am I going to die of heat? Am I going to be burned down by this sun? I hope they get well. So I am Imo Ebo, and I am an actor in Nigeria. I also produce. I have worked on films on mental health, and that's how I'm part of the mental health space. I'm a global shaper, and I'm with the mental health team of the Global Shapers community. I'm the happiness sharer on Instagram. So every Monday, I share Monday vibes to make people happy through Monday. Nice to meet you all, and let's carry on.
Thank you so much for everybody introducing themselves. I will now start with the panel discussion. So I'm posing this question to Lisa and Jean-Andre. In your work, how are you contributing positively towards mental health?
So I'm going to start. And I think, you know, being part of SADAG, I've been actually with SADAG for the past 8 years, and we've done so many different activations pre-COVID, during COVID, and I'm not going to say post-COVID because we're still here. But there's been a lot of activation. So SADAG as an organization have quite a few dedicated helplines that we actually provide to all students across the board, across the country. And these helplines are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We provide free telephonic counseling, resources, awareness. We also have a lot of activations that we take part in. So if a university space or a webinar like this, we're able to share the information around warning signs, around, you know, what loved ones can look out for with their young people, what young people can look out for, like what are the warning signs? How am I feeling right now? Doing mental health check-ins are one of those things that I've actually included in every single one of the talks that I've done, is because it's so easy for us to do that 2-minute mental health check-in just to see where we are in the space. And often with all the things that are going on when we went into lockdown and then having the youth either do online schooling or hybrid schooling or having to go back to, you know, proper schooling like how they did before, it's all of those fears that also come into play. And I think it's impacted the youth so much. We actually had research that was done, not me, but Sukendo did research just before Substance Abuse Awareness Day. And the stats showed that students and young people and youth and adolescents are actually at a higher risk of being subjected to actually taking substances. And that was a big activation that we did for Substance Abuse Awareness Day, where we actually started off a new WhatsApp sort of counseling service or WhatsApp chat, where young people, because they might not want to pick up their phone and speak to someone, are able to chat to a counselor, build that repertoire, and then be able to get a call after that with resources and help. I'm sorry, I gave a whole mouthful there. Chandra?
No, thanks, Chandra.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Manisha. So I think, I started Advocacy for Change last year, 2021 in March. And I think before my time at Advocacy for Change, I had an understanding of mental health, looking after my own, but I don't think I took it very serious. Also growing up, I think for me, it wasn't a big thing to speak about some of the stuff I'm going through, to share how I'm feeling. And then joining the organization, I think that opened up my eyes a lot, and it helped me to see the importance of my mental well-being and the role that I play in the space, right? So I started off, when I started at Waves, I was a site manager. And from the get-go, I would say that my role was always to, so I manage a group of 10 coaches, 11 coaches. And my role was always to provide guidance and mentoring for these young people, to create a space that is safe for these coaches that I'm working with, to be a caring adult or manager. And so in order for those things to take place, I needed to understand the importance of mental health, right? I needed to make sure that I'm taking care of mine. Am I in spaces that are safe? Am I in spaces that's open for me to share? Am I walking alongside people that's mentoring me, that's guiding me, that's allowing me to express the way that I feel? And I think since my time in the organization, I've tried to create that space for my coaches. And so I'm always hoping that there's this positive chain reaction that's taking place. I'm taking care of my mental health. And so I'm hoping then I'm then able to take care of my coaches' mental health. And my coaches, they deal with the participants on a daily basis, programming, making sure that programming is right, making sure that we creating spaces that are safe, that they are able to then mentor these kids, that there's a skills transfer that's taking place, coping skill transfer, where they are able to share that with the kids, and so that the kids can then go out into their communities, and then they can be part of this chain, this positive chain reaction, positive reinforcement, where we are creating spaces for people to share and be open. And so, yeah, I think I would like to think that I am creating more awareness that I am being positive about my mental health. And I'm hoping that the way that I lead my space with my coaches allows them to then do the same thing with our young people that we're working with every day. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I think something that both of you guys mentioned is how we tend to neglect our own mental health and then think of other people. But I think it's so important to also remember your health and what you can and can't do in order to help the next person, because you can't help the next person if you don't help yourself. But I'd like to move on to the, yes?
Can I just add something? Sorry, what I forgot to mention was that at Ways for Change, what we do once a week is we have a debrief session. A psychologist comes in, and it's normally towards the end of the week, and it's an opportunity for us to share how the week has been. And I thought it's so important for me as like the manager of one of the sites to be vulnerable and open to share, because in that creates a space for everyone else to also share how they are feeling, what they're going through, what was challenging this week, how do we overcome those challenges. And the session allows for the coaches to start to process and also come up with solutions to some of the stuff that they are struggling with, and not just someone coming in and giving us all the answers or telling us this is what we have to do. But it's a brainstorming session for all of us to be, okay, this is how we are feeling, this is how you're feeling, let's be mindful of that, but how do we overcome these things? And so that's been really amazing through the organization, these debrief sessions like that. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that.
I wanted to snap caps, but not everybody knows what snap caps are. TLC in ways of change. Tell it later. Moving on to our next question. I'm posing this to Ahmad and Imo. What are the main challenges faced by young people with regards to mental health globally and in your context? I'm going to hand over to Ahmad to go first.
Thank you so much for your question. Just a quick check, am I audible? Okay, so in one word, I would say mental health isn't an easy phenomenon, as there are multiple determinants and challenges to attaining a peaceful mind. Some days are lethargic because you have lost a loved one, another day because of failure, other times you don't even know what the reason is because it's unconsciously impacting you. In today's world, 1 in 7 adolescents experiences a mental disorder, accounting for 13% of the global burden of disease in this age group. Regrettably, the major obstacle to achieving mental health comes from an absence of budget allocation towards research, policy making, and program implementation that could save and improve the lives of 16% of the population. As an example, if you travel to Afghanistan, you will hear the story of Shaida Gul, whose in-laws pushed her face into a hot furnace after breaking her teeth, or Reza, who had to sell his kidneys in return for $120 to survive hunger. They both live with post-traumatic stress disorder, and out of stigmatization and unaffordability, they can't access life-saving priority services. Thousands stories of suffrage flashes from all over Afghanistan, but accurate research is missing to present it to the world because my country leaders use the political unrest as a reasonable alibi to ignore the demanded improvement in mental health. On the other hand, people's literacy on this topic is so negligible that patients are ignored, tortured, taken advantage of, and even murdered for not fitting the communal standards that are expected of them. Recently, Dr. Anwar al-Haq, a medical doctor who developed a mental disorder, was brought to YouTube channels to be ridiculed for his jacked standpoint on marriage and his political opinions. After a fortnight, he was beheaded by strangers for insulting the dignity of Afghan warlords. Such is our understanding about and treatment of mentally ill patients. In addition, the university curriculum for psychology in my country falls incompetent to generate a skilled workforce. Psychologists are unfairly paid at the workplace, and they are fooled by myths that by treating mentally ill patients, they might go crazy as well. Therefore, they rebuff to work in clinical settings. This might be a good reason as to why there are only 2 psychiatrists for 100,000 people, and quite often the most skilled one is incapable of conducting illness-related services. My friend, who had mild obsessive-compulsive disorder, visited a country's well-known psychologist who prescribed him high-dose thought disorders instead of scheduling therapy. And such examples demonstrate a wide gap in our understanding of mental health, even in professional spaces. For young people worldwide, marginalization within the cross-sections of wealth and gender is highly common, as primarily our socioeconomic status defines how we start the day. For high-income families, upkeeping a mentally well state of mind, like doing an outdoor activity, isn't an issue, whereas for the poor, it's vice versa. The cases of poor girls, or worse off, as they bear increased household responsibilities and they endure poor mental health via increased domestic violence. Regrettably, stereotyped attitudes and discrimination accompanies people of race, gender, and socioeconomic status in workplaces and academic settings in the absence of safeguarding policies or well-being services, which directly impacts their performance and self-esteem. In this regard, individuals might fall victims of nepotism, get denied a job offer, or even enrollment into school, leaving all the burden on their mental health. Mostly, the toolkits developed for promoting social emotional learning add salts to an individual's injury instead of building resilience. For example, it's commonly advised to exercise for good mental health, but how is someone supposed to exercise while he, she, or they don't have enough food to eat? But let's close our eyes and visualize what if people were educated on how their opinions affect others' mental health? What if our classrooms promote growth instead of burying our hopes? Respect, resilience, and resonance comes with the right attention and investment towards our emotions and mentality. To prove it, a new research shows a higher quality of performance and productivity under mentally healthy conditions. So with all the challenge in the mental health space, how would you contribute towards making a healthy space? I'll read your opinions in the chat box, and I hope that I have addressed the question comprehensively.
Thanks so much, Ahmed.
Thank you. Thank you for
so
having me.
much. Imo, can I hand over to you?
Yes, please. Thanks a lot, Ahmad, for that extensive research, well-researched talk on the youth and mental health. I'll just do a backdrop against what, not a backdrop, to talk about mental health for the youth.
Imo, your connection is quite bad. I don't know if you need to move.
Okay, I don't know if you are here.
No, your network is going up and down.
It might be better if she switches off her video.
There we go.
Okay, so can you hear me clearly now?
It's a bit better. Let's give it another go.
Okay. Okay. So is it better now? Better now? Oh, no.
It's a bit better now. Let's hear.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So thanks again, Ahmad, for your extensive addition to this. I really appreciate it. So we're going to come back to what are the main challenges faced by the youth in mental health in my own context. Yes. So he has talked about it in his context from Afghanistan and globally from his research work. So I'm going to add on with what is happening in Nigeria and a bit across West Africa. So since the pandemic, different things have happened. We've had pandemic children, we had pandemic, let's say COVID children, COVID marriages, COVID homes, COVID families that have grown from 2020 up until now. And the cause of the world has changed since then. And even work has changed. In my own field, in 2020, people were not able to work because our work deals with seeing people physically, and this had people stay at home instead of work. So this ended up having people not get to go to work, and this ended up making people not get to feed as they would have fed if they were working. Please let me know if you can hear me in the comment section. If you cannot hear me, please let me know in the comment section. Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Okay, thanks, Ahmad. Thanks, Andre. Okay, yes. So this has created a different effect on people. I'll use myself as an example. In 2020, I used to be the happiness person, but at a point, I stopped work. I stopped the number of jobs that were already in the pipeline, and this ended up being a bad situation, a not so good situation for me, because I wasn't working and I wasn't earning. And unfortunately, this affected how I was thinking and how the process went. Fast forward to a year and a half later, work starts to come back and then we resume. But while I was there, I started to talk to a therapist because I really knew I needed a therapist. This year, this started in May, and this was how I was able to help myself. Now, being stronger, we're helping people with continuous laughter. And where do we find the young people? Where do we find the youth today? We find them on social media. What affects the mental health of the youth now is the success of their friends, success of their peers, and their present state and how they think they are. And this has moved them to have unconscious mental instability because of worry, because of anxiety. They have anxiety because they feel they feel unaccomplished because other people have thousands of likes and they have just 2 likes. And this is one of the major things that I've seen affect young people. And in this form, I have decided that I would share a Monday dance with everyone, because Monday is the day that is supposed to be serious for everyone. Everybody goes 9 to 5 hours, goes to work. On Mondays, I share these videos for them to be happy. On the other hand, with well-researched work, we have films that are made. I recently made one that has made it to produced one with other people, with other producers, that has made it to 7 festivals to show. I'm sorry. Once I finish this, I'm going to try another internet connection. So for the young people right now, I'll pick on social media and how it is affecting the young people globally, and I'm hoping that we find a solution to this problem, hopefully, because the internet has gone really deep and we have apps that are showing people you are good enough and you're not good enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imo. I hope when you return that your connection is better. Venetia, I think you have a comment or a question.
I do. I just wanted to add on to the question, because I just thought about, as Ahmed was mentioning, the challenges and, having the lack of resources. So like not having enough psychologists, not having enough psychiatrists. South Africa also has these issues where we don't have enough therapists to actually help people. We don't have enough therapists in the schooling situation, or for the youth, or for adults even. It's too little. There's too little resources and there's too many people. But what is important, I think, and this is something that we also explain when we, get our calls, our counselors are able to explain, is what is the role of a psychologist? What is the role of a psychiatrist? I think it's that understanding and awareness of, what is the role of a social worker? What is the role of a registered counselor? How can they then help you? Also, what is the role of a telephonic counselor that you're phoning in at SADC? And, maybe you might not need a psychologist. Maybe you just need to speak to a telephonic counselor where they can share the coping skills, the self-help tips, and also manage you in that moment if you're stressed and overwhelmed. And I think that also comes down to creating exactly what Genre was saying, is that awareness, understanding how you're feeling, speaking about how you're feeling, and also starting that dialogue and changing the narrative to, instead of saying, and I know this is a cliche thought, instead of asking like, how are you doing today? Or, is it, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling a little bit overwhelmed? And it might be better to actually start saying that, maybe I've noticed that you haven't been looking after yourself. And me as a sibling, a friend, a family member is saying, Mary, I'm so sorry. I've noticed that you haven't been looking after yourself. Maybe you haven't showered in a few days. Maybe you haven't done your hair, and before you always used to do your hair. So maybe something is going on. Is there something that you need? And I think often coming from a place of complete support and non-judgment is very important. So if we can all come towards someone else and are concerned, but come to them with, that compassion and that care to say that we're here. Even if you don't want to speak to me, I can sit with you, I can be here with you. And when you are ready, know that I'm still here to be able to reach out to. And I think that's a valuable space to maybe, touch on. Thank you.
Thank you, Venetia. I think that's so true. Just checking up on the next person to know that you are there is so important. Even if it's just to listen, will make a big, big difference. I would like to move on to our next question. I think Imo is back now. So after that question, which I'll be posing to you, Venetia and Andre, through your work, how do you see research and advocacy drive for impact?
Okay, I'll speak first, if that's okay, Venetia. So regarding research and advocacy, I think these are two extremely important factors to ensure that we can understand what the impact of the work that we're doing is, number one, but also so that we can grow the awareness on more people understanding what mental health is. Yeah, so I think I'll start with the research, right? So we use various methods to do data collection to get a better understanding of the work that we're doing. How do we measure this? Is it feasible? Is it working? And we also feel that through the research that we do, it allows us to interact with the stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, it's not just people that's giving us funding, but it's also schools and parents, right? Because the kids are coming to our program, we collecting data through the work that we're doing, and there's an output after that, and we can say, you know what, through your kid being a part of the program, this is the impact that has taken place in their life. Also, through that interaction with the stakeholders, parents become a lot more aware of what we are doing. And then it becomes a referral basis, right? So now this parent is seeing the impact of the work that you are doing with their child, and they then tell their neighbor. Neighbor then tells the auntie, and more people are aware of the work that we're doing. And so we've established a lot of relationships that way in order for us to receive referrals of kids to be a part of the program and to grow through the work that we are doing. And then in terms of advocacy, I think that's also another important factor when it comes to impact. And I think one of the ways that we've tried to do this is by recruiting coaches from the communities that we are working in. A lot of the coaches in my team here in Luxembourg, well, a few of them have come through the program. So they were participants first on the program. Now they are coaches, and now they can see the role that they play in the lives of the new participants. But all of the coaches that we've recruited are from the communities that we work in, right? And so I always think that when you're working in the community, I'm thinking about participants now, and they see one of their coaches just that connection that takes place, that they're able to relate, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is my coach. Wonder when I'm big, that's what I want to be like, right? And so these coaches are now sharing their skills with the kids. Kids are at the program, they're going down, they're sharing with the parents about the good work that the coaches are doing, but the parents are able to see the change that's taking place in the life of the kid. And so all of that then allows for us to advocate for the work that we're doing, and especially the young coaches that we use in these communities. Yeah, so I think it's important that we are the living proof, right? Our coaches are the living proof. All of us that's advocating in the space, we're the living proof, and it gives other people hope that there is something, they can look after them. Yeah.
Thanks, Chandra.
Thanks so much for that. I think it's you touched on such a nice thing where you are the living proof. And I think that's so valuable. And that's where research, I think, like you mentioned, plays such a big role, because then it shows, okay, this is the need, this is what's happening. And a lot of stakeholders, as you mentioned, will look at the numbers and be like, yes, okay, fine, funding is important, but what kind of different initiatives can we do to actually make a bigger impact? And I think that's very valuable, because with research, and I mean, if I touch on a little bit around SADAG, and pre-COVID, we saw 600 to 700 calls a day. And right now we're sitting at almost 3,000 calls a day, showing that, I mean, a lot of people are needing that assistance. They're not sure what assistance they might need. So they're not sure, like, am I experiencing symptoms of anxiety? Am I experiencing symptoms of depression? What is this? And I think when we went into the lockdown initially in the beginning of COVID, a lot of people struggled, because within that first month, our calls doubled. We went to around 1,400 calls within that first month alone. And that means that a lot of people were struggling. They were struggling with the change of our lives, the change of everything. And, you know, having those stats or having those call numbers to say, like, you know, this many people were struggling with substance abuse issues. This many people were struggling with symptoms of anxiety. This many people actually needed to see a psychologist. Maybe they weren't able to. Maybe, you know, the medical aid assistance was up, or maybe the local clinics weren't, you know, having a psychologist anymore because they were actually doing COVID treatments. So there was a lot of different things that were happening. And I think with research and with information, we're able to say, okay, how good are school talks? How do we do school talks? SADAG is actually mandated to do school talks, not in an assembly, but actually to do them class by class. And not only do we speak to the students, but we also speak to the teachers, we also speak to the parents, so that we provide all that information around mental health holistically, so that when the students might, you know, say something around mental health, the teacher is very much aware of, like, oh, okay, this is what the student is saying, and this is what it means. So it's almost to close that gap. And I think it's very vital, even though research is very expensive, I think it's very vital to still have research done in the right spaces. Thank you.
Sorry, Ellie, I don't know if I can add. Is it okay if I add? Thanks, Manisha. Yeah, I was the previous question. I also want to touch a bit on that, and it links into research and some of the stuff that we are doing at Ways to Change. I wanted to say that one community that we are working with, gangsterism is extremely out of control. Domestic violence, gender-based violence, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, it's crazy, right? And so a lot of our kids come from this community. And so the challenges that they are facing is immense. And some of them are turning to one, if not all of those things. And we're trying to create a space where there's an alternative to that. And so one of the in terms of research, one of the tests, you could call it, that we do is called, it's an HRV test, it's a heart rate variability test. And it allows us to measure the heart's response to trauma. So your fright, your flight, freeze response, right? And it's crazy to see that shots going off in the community, there's absolutely no response to it. It's a normal thing for these kids, right? And that's not normal. It's not normal. If I hear a gunshot, I fear for my life. I'm running, I'm ducking, I'm doing something. But for some of these kids, that's an everyday response. And that's not okay. It's really not okay. And so the research that we're able to do allows us to create a space, equip kids with the coping skills that they need to respond in those situations, and to say that that's actually not okay. We should be responding. It's not fine for you to just be there. How are you feeling? How does that make you feel? How do we change that? And so these tests allow us to share that with the stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you, Chandra. I am joining from another laptop. I'm very sorry, my laptop just crashed. So I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to answer you, Chandra. But I'll move on to the next question, and apologies for my laptop doing its own thing today. So the fourth question is posed to Imo and Ahmed. How do you see mental health work contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals in your country? Can I pose it to Imo first? Are you ready?
Yes, please. Thank you. Mental health, sustainable development goals. At the moment, we have 17 sustainable development goals. And for these sustainable development goals to be brought to fruition, we need people with sound minds to do that. And this is where the mental health space plays a huge role based on research and based off what we see in reality, on the real numbers. We know that the sustainable development goals are not going to be brought to fruition without people who have sound minds, without people who have mental stability. So, I mean, mental health does not mean people are crazy or going bonkers. Mental health is an array of many things. So we have the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria that are supposed to be met. However, Nigeria is Nigeria at the moment with our different kinds of leaders, and their mental states really affect how we would focus on eradicating poverty, ensuring that there's gender equality, ensuring that our seas are not filled with bottles and plastics that kill the fish that we're meant to eat. However, we have these bottles also blocking our drainages, and this causes like serious flood when it rains here. We're in the rainy season, even if it's hot as well in Nigeria, but we've suffered some floods in recent times. This stops people from going to work, and there's no sustainability in that. This affects businesses as well. It affects businesses as well. So the mental health space contributes a lot. And I believe that the mental health space should even be one of the sustainable development goals, as a matter of fact. So we should have 18 sustainable development goals. If that could be a thing, I believe that it should be part of the sustainable development goals at this point. As much as we want to eradicate poverty, we need to eradicate the issue of the mind that affects human beings, which is really critical, because if you're eradicating poverty, you need somebody who's stable. You need somebody who's, you need to eradicate, to ensure that people go to school to get an education after you've been able to eradicate, maybe not totally eradicate poverty. You need a sound mind to go to school to get an education, if at all. So sustainable development goals are very, very necessary for the mental health space. And I believe that mental health should be one of the a major sustainable development goal. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Imo. I totally agree with you. I feel that if that was the 18th Sustainable Development Goal, we'll be able to overcome the others, because that the mental health affects all of the others. It affects the poverty, it affects the living situation, it affects everything. But I'd like to hand over to Ahmed.
For the response.
Sorry,
Is
Ahmed, can
a
I ask you
major
to put your
positive
video off?
revelation.
Just for the connection.
Okay, is it better now? So a major positive revelation in the mental health space is the strong connection it forges with achieving the SDG, and the concept easily understandable because good mental health is the foundation of our passion, our power, and our perseverance. And the mental health report that was recently launched by the World Health Organization, there's a clear link between mental health and all the SDGs, with the most substantive relation being between quality education, gender equality, peace, and reduced inequalities. My personal observations and global statistics are there to prove that our potential within a mentally healthy state extends beyond normal and can empower, reinforce, and catalyze change at all levels, and in its absence, the vice versa. As a scholar, I feel the turbulence that accompanies students in educational settings in forms of bullying and unjustified biases of peers and the very own teachers on a student's scholastic abilities, body image, and wealth, to a point that bullying emerges as an epidemic affecting 1 in 3 youth worldwide. I wish it ended there, but the scar remains with them eternally, and their performance considerably falls down, which might take a world of opportunities from them. Similarly, with regards to gender equality in women, their own plight is doubled with bearing the poor mental health of their male counterparts as well. In psychology, there is a concept called displacement, in which an individual shifts their aggressive impulses towards a less threatening person or object. Unfortunately, in almost all houses, men shift their anger towards women in the house. Say that you have lost a job, you come home and you start beating your wife or sister for an absurd reason, all which stems from a lack of knowledge and control over their feelings. But how about women themselves? Out of domestic violence and invalidity from their family, 86% of those who commit suicide in Afghanistan are women. On the other hand, the ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan and Ukraine makes the atmosphere dark and bleak as youth hang around being unemployed and addicted to drugs, millions being bereaved, and mental tensions stemming from hunger and low quality of life topping the charts. In the absence of a centralized government system, crime rates are also on the rise, taking the lives of innocent people who had no choice in the war. Nahid was a young maid who occasionally washed carpets of her house in the backyard. One fatal day, she drew the attention of an Afghan warlord supporter who later at night came to her house to forcibly use her as a sex slave. She got so mentally pressurized that she asked for permission from her grandmother to jump from the balcony in suicide. Her grandmother said yes to her decision, and so her life ended up there as a victim of warfare and conflict. These narratives leave no doubt that mental health is considerably impacted and impacts the progress towards the SDGs. Research shows that a linear increase in treatment coverage could secure 43 million extra years of healthy life at a value of $310 billion and generate a further $399 billion in productivity gains. You might say, what else? Let me tell you. In Jamaica, an increased coverage of psychological treatment from 15 to 50% reaped $434 million in return from productivity gains and wider social benefits. Although the health sector has a clear role in prevention and promotion, most universal strategies require action beyond the health sector. This is important because any model of health promotion and prevention that fails to tackle the structural determinants of mental health will be limited in its reach. Moreover, the broad social and structural ills, such as abuse and exploitation that pervade the society, must be redressed not simply because they impact health, but because they violate our common values in and of themselves. That being said, mental health education and protection must be used as an agent of change in the humanic community. I understand that for most low to middle income countries, enhancing or providing mental health services might be a financial burden, but the least we can do is to educate our communities on how their behavior can determine someone's future. Strong protection policies, along with staff sensitization across workplaces, schools, and even public spaces can prevent the exclusion of vulnerable communities who are paramountly impacted on such grounds. Living a fulfilling and stigma-free life is the right of every individual. Thereby, let's jointly move the needle for conserving our rights, especially our mental rights. Thank you.
Ahmed, I thought I'd have something to add, but I don't. You said it perfectly. So, so powerful. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So I'd like to hand over to the whole panel to answer this question. Please only share one thought. I will say, can we go Genre, Ahmed, Venetia, and then Imo? Share one thought on how can youth voices and youth-driven approaches be amplified in the mental health discourse?
Okay, so I think through more engagement around mental health, youth mental health, that's important. And then also a greater awareness of the work that they're doing, not just here in South Africa, but globally. I think that's going to be extremely helpful. And then I also made a few notes. I think our mental health champions asking questions, and I think it was Venetia that said it earlier, how are you feeling? That's an important question. And maybe more people should be asking that question of each other. How are you feeling? I also think mental health champions to be sharing success stories, because that would help push the envelope a bit more and it will create a greater awareness. And then the last thing that I said was inviting the community along on this journey, the various communities that we are working with, inviting them to journey with us.
Thanks, Genre. Over to you, Ahmed.
I think to ensure that youth-driven approaches are amplified, young people, especially those with lived experiences, should be included in all states of developing, implementing, and monitoring program policies and investments of resources. And similarly, I think access to accurate information and training when necessary is important to ensure that they know the technical and political context and the stakeholders with whom they are engaging with. As my last points, I would say that entities should foster power sharing between and among stakeholders so that young people are partners and leaders rather than beneficiaries. And lastly, an established process should be facilitated for addressing and incorporating feedback from young people on how our systems and programs can be improved to best serve them.
Thanks.
I feel like he said everything that I want to say, but I will say it because I love my voice. No, I'm joking. No, I think it's so important, and exactly, it's about sharing those lived experiences, sharing their emotions. When they share their success stories, like, okay, you know, I struggled, this was my situation, but I reached out, this was the resource I used, and it helped, and now I'm doing so much better. And I think that story is so real. It allows the others that might be struggling, whether they're younger, whether they're older, whether they're in their same standard or in their same class, they're like, you know, Mary noticed this and she actually reached out, she actually got help. I can also then reach out and get some sort of help. And that also helps destigmatize mental health. We all know the stigma around mental health, whether it be little kids, whether it be the youth, whether it be adults, whether it be, you know, old age, stigma is everywhere. no one wants to be known that, okay, you know, I might have depression, I might have anxiety, I am struggling, but they don't want to let anyone know. And I think one of the things that I'd like to say is that it's okay to not be okay. And having these discussions like this is wonderful because we're changing that narrative. We're having these dialogues that actually allow, even if one person listening here gets something out of it, that's just one more person that's able to say, you know what, I'm struggling today, I'm gonna go get help. I think I know where I need to reach out. And I think that's all I want to say, because there was so much said already. Thank you.
Thank you. I think representation is so important, because I feel like we all think that we're going through our issues and challenges alone. And once you know that there is somebody else going through the same thing or something similar, you can open up and start getting support. But let me not delve into that. Imo, can I hand over to you for the last thought?
To be said, really. So I feel like there's nothing more to be said. However, we said one. So while we share all of these things, all of this, while we do everything that Andre has said, Ahmad has said, and Vanisha has said, which are, I will just list them. I'll just list them again. Having mental health champions, asking the question, how are you feeling, instead of how are you feeling? It's a real question that goes deep. More training, and then involvement of all stakeholders. Like Ella Gore already said here, not about us without us. I mean, get everyone involved. And after all these have been done, I mentioned earlier, social media. That's where we have the Generation Alpha and we have the Generation Z. Generation Alpha and Gen Z, we have millennials. So we have millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha on the internet. And that's where we can preach mental health. And that's how we can break the stigma. Recently, we had one of the famous actors in Nigeria die. And before she died, she had been talking about her mental state and trying to seek help. But she ate one morning, she shared something on Instagram, and the next moment, we hear that she's dead. She most likely had a heart attack from heartbreak because she had lost a number of family members, and she had resorted into substance abuse to help her sustain her sanity. So if we kill the stigma of mental health, we would have more people who want to associate with people who are complaining about mental health. And from the internet, I believe we can do this. So I'd add that we should add social media to this. That's the usual internet, and then WhatsApp, where people share news. We should spread the gospel. We should spread the good news of mental stability, mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imo. I did notice that there are no questions in the chat, so I'd like to open it to the floor and everybody in the room. If you have any questions for the panel, you can just raise your hand if you'd like a question answered. Nothing. If you wouldn't like to speak, you can post the question in the chat.
Ailey, just something that I also just thought about now when we're speaking about youth voices and youth-driven approaches being amplified in the mental health space. The power of collaboration, the power of partnerships is also so important. This collaboration that's taking place now globally it helps a lot. I think it's important that we are networking and that it's not one organization is isolated and they do this on their own, but everyone coming together, and it just helps to amplify the voice.
Thank you, Jean-Ray. We have one question okay, two questions. Okay, so the first question is, and I'm going to pose it to our panel, is how can children's voices be included in the mental health conversation in a child-friendly manner? I want to start with Imo this time.
Alpha, and this is where we have children, and I'm really happy with what Waves for Change is doing, because they involve children in this. Initially, some years ago, I used to go to public schools to read with them on Wednesdays. So this was getting children to understand that they're the master of their fate and the captains of their soul. So they need to be happy. This was how I involved children at the time. And now we have children. Not all children are on the internet, but we have our Generation Alpha. And this is why on this note, I think that we can go to more schools to involve children. And like Waves for Change is already doing, we can have children who are out of school being attended to with activities like this, with coaches who are happy. Like Andre said, you need mentally stable coaches who would show these children that they can also be like them. So you are regurgitating your life to these children. So how we live our lives and how we take care of our minds is what we can pass on to these children. And that's how we can help children. Let's go to schools and let's look out for those who are out of school as well, as much as we can. Earlier on in Africa, we used to say, we had the saying of a child is being trained by the family and neighbors as well. Now we're so private that children only get their help from parents. They don't even get their help from teachers, because teachers just want to teach in school and leave. But we have more coaches like those from Waves for Change and coaches from Vanisha's team. We have more of them getting to talk to children and speaking with children. We'll have a lot done. There's this page on Instagram, it's called Recess Therapy. And I really enjoy the page because I go there because of the way the children talk to this particular guy on Recess Therapy, who just meets children on the road randomly to ask questions and to give them gifts when they do something good at a mall. So we have more of those, children will be helped and they'll be introduced into the mental health space. So their subconscious already has that. So as they grow, they're growing with good mental health. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think that speaks into I feel like our main pillar, which is our caring mentors, to be the driver to speak on behalf of the children because they've had that experience, but also amplify their voices. I think that's so important. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the panel who would like to share on how children's voices can be included in the mental health conversation in a child-friendly manner? No. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Carla, there's never a silly question, but the question is, any tips on creating the safe space for young people? Does it need to have a physical space to be successful? I'm going to open it to the floor. Please unmute if you'd like to answer.
I think I will attempt this one because I've been speaking a lot about safe spaces. If only it was just a space where kids could run to and we could share all of these things, right? It would be very easy. But I think the idea with creating a safe space is allowing kids to trust you and to confide in you and to actually share about some of the stuff that they're really going through or how they are feeling. And so it's not an actual space, but it's you as, in our case, the coach, getting kids to a space or to a understanding of, I'm here for you, I want to assist in any way possible, build their trust, and then they're able to then share with you and confide in you to say, okay, this is actually what I'm going through. I didn't feel safe before to share this with anyone because everyone that I've encountered before said, no, you don't share this with nobody, but you've built that relationship and that level of trust for them to actually open up, and then the space becomes safe for them to share.
Thank you, Chandra. Vanisha, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I think this speaks, and you said it so wonderfully, Genre, is that that's exactly that. It's like that space is just having that allowance to be able to speak. And I think this question almost speaks to that whole concept of boys don't cry. And I think, touching on the fact that it's okay to actually feel these emotions of sadness. It's okay to feel these emotions of feeling a little bit helpless and hopeless and not being able to, cry, actually, not be able to say that, I'm feeling sad right now. I'm not able to share these because it's not the words I'm supposed to be using. And I think that's where it comes about, to changing that narrative. And it also comes from not only, like Imo mentioned, teachers, it comes from teachers as well. It comes from any caretakers. It comes from, having older siblings or aunts and uncles. It's almost this holistic space. Remember, children grow up in a very, and there's always that argument between nurture and nature. And I'm not an expert on this, but this is my view, is that there is a huge impact between nurture and nature. Because if everyone around us is speaking in a certain way, we're going to speak in that way as well. We're going to be able to learn, and it's a whole practice what you preach, right, is that everybody needs to tell their kids, okay, you need to share how you're feeling, but I as a parent am not sharing how I'm feeling when my child is noticing I might be down and low. So I think it's about opening up the conversations. I cannot stress enough about having these open conversations where you're able to share exactly what it is, obviously child appropriate, using the words that are correct, and there's so much information around that, but just to make sure that they're aware of it. And I think that makes a very huge impact, because it allows them then to go with their little friends at school, or adults, or high school students as well, saying that they can go to school and they notice someone is not feeling well, but they're going to say exactly what I said. Is like, how are you feeling? I've noticed that you haven't been feeling well, instead of just saying, okay, I don't want to get involved in this conversation, so I'm going to ignore it and move on. And I think that's where that small shift in that narrative needs to be. I don't know, I think I've said too much now.
No, you said it perfectly. Thank you so much. We have one last question. Before I pose the question, I'm going to ask for the last time, if you do have any questions, please pose it in the chat. But the last question that I do see is, what does collaboration look like practically for you? I'm going to wait for someone to unmute. I'm going to choose one of you guys. Ahmed, I haven't heard from you in a long time. Can I hear your voice?
Yeah, I was anyways about to unmute. So I think in terms of mental health advocacy, there are a lot of areas in which collaboration can come handy. As an example, I would say that with all the novel innovations that we have right now, like task shifting or digital technologies and the usage of sports, we know that interventions can affordably advance mental health outside clinical settings, and they can also act as a protective factor for our mental health. And especially, I think mental health is an issue that we face, and it can be a challenge in everywhere we go, even in public spaces, even in schools and workplaces. And with the combination of, for example, sports, just as Waves for Change is doing, or leveraging digital technologies for providing affordable services, just as Venetia said, that we, right now we have telephonic counselors, we have just as Emo touched on this, that we have social media platforms for improving our mental health. So this shows that there are a lot of areas for investment in mental health, and we can support our mental health in a lot of different ways. Say that an individual or a project or intervention needs to be implemented in a low to middle income country like Afghanistan. Even here, you can collaborate with the community, with faith leaders, with educators in the community to advance mental health. And this is an issue that we face, and we might be challenged by it every day. So the best possible way is to educate our communities and to leverage about innovative ways in which we can integrate mental health. But most specifically, I think in schools and workplaces, use of supports and digital technologies, task shifting, and all these concepts that are emerging and being implemented in different parts of the world can be a protective factor, as well as collaborative point for mental health.
Thank you so much. So to conclude the discussion between our panelists, I'd like to pose the last question. Please, can each of you share one short sentence on your dream for youth mental health? I'm going to go backwards now. Imo, Venetia, Ahmed, then Chandra.
Please come again, one word or one sentence on
your dream for youth mental health.
We should all be okay. So we should all be okay is future. So it comes in different ways. It's futuristic, and it's also like present, and it's also like past as well. We should all be okay. There are just so many things happening, and the youth are really affected. The lifespan of human beings at the moment, not by research, looks a lot like 35. And it's based on our mental health state, because a lot of people are having heart attacks and issues that have to do with the mind. And this is making us lose a lot of people at very young ages. And we should all be okay spans and cuts across ensuring that we have collaborations, ensuring that we involve children in the language of mental health, so that by the time they get to their 20s, their teenies, and their adulthood, they already know, they're already guarded, they're already guided through this path to be okay in every aspect of their lives. So we should all be okay. We should all be okay can also stem from how are you feeling? So you already have a smile as you ask, how are you feeling? And this already brings up the happy moments and the beautiful memories for this person who is being asked the question, how are you feeling? The person already is happy that someone is asking that question. How are you feeling? So we should all be all right. So I'm asking you this question because I'm okay, and I will hope that you're okay as well. And this person brings out and forks out the beautiful parts that help them go through that day. How are you feeling? Thanks a lot for that question, Venetia, because I just sent it to someone. This person is already asking, like, what's this about? I've not answered. I'll go back to answer the person, but I already know how it's making the person feel. How are you feeling? And this goes a long way for all of us to be okay. We should all be okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imo.
Thank you. I think I think that's one of the questions. I will actually via email just send that there's a little poster of different ways of asking how are you, and it was so cute, but it's so real. I'll send it via email so that everyone can see it. So it's very useful. So my dream would be, and I think this is something I can say, is that lead by example. I think if young people share their experiences, share what's going on, share that they've gotten help and support, it will help destigmatize mental health, destigmatize, any feeling that we have, that we're having that might be deteriorating. So I think it's very valuable to lead by example and know that there is help and there is support. There's always SADAG's 0800 numbers. They are all 24 hours a day. So please reach out, even if you just want to speak to someone or have a conversation or ask a question. And I love that earlier Haley said there's no stupid question. There is definitely no stupid question. You can ask anything at any point. So thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed?
I dream of the day when all humans consider mental problems as normal and permissible, a day when mental health is foregrounded to protect human rights, and when no one is mentally ill because of social and structural inequalities.
Thank you. Chandra?
My dream is that there are more spaces where young people can find a sense of belonging, where they can learn new skills, where they can be confident, and they can create positive behaviors towards mental well-being.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank everybody for joining this amazing webinar. It was my first. I was very nervous, but I'm actually keen to do more. I'm keen to meet new people. I'm keen to learn new things. And I definitely want to meet Ahmed and Benisha and Imo one day. But to conclude, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of breaking the stigma. I think that one thing that we should all try and do is definitely get mental health as part of one of the SDGs, make it the 18th one, because it affects everyone. It affects each and every one of the SDGs. So I think that is something that I will take away from it. Thank you for Imo for posing that insightful information. I'm going to hand over to Tanya to close it. Insightful information. I've learned a lot.
I don't know how to even close. I think I had a closing kind of statement, but I think the first thing I'd like to say is just being in the background and just listening. I think there's the one thing that we can say is that there was lots of synergy amongst everyone. It was different voices, but one common goal. And I think if anything, like you said, Benisha, if more spaces like this can be held and more conversations through collaboration, we can definitely reach the dreams that you guys aspire to have as individuals and I think as organizations. So in closing, I just want to first and foremost take the opportunity to thank each and every one, participants, for joining in on our first youth webinar. I think a huge thank you for taking the time out of very busy diaries to make the time for this. I think making the time is a starting point and acknowledging that time needs to be made to have these conversations is quite imperative. So I want to say thank you to everyone. There's going to, like I advised earlier, the recording will be sent to you guys. I think, Venetia, there was a couple of things that you mentioned you'd want to share, so I think share that with our viewers so she can share it. Our viewer will also be sharing in the chat the handles and the links to these organizations so everyone can have a look at it and find out more about it, because I think that is a starting point for everyone. Then to panelists, speakers, keynote speakers, Ape, Shani, Ahmed, Jandre, Benisha, Imo, and most importantly, Hailey for holding the space. I think thank you. Beware in your silent background that you are busy coordinating and doing everything. A huge thank you for the opportunity for the space to be held. And I just want to say a big thank you and continuation of being mental health champions in the space. I think that's the big one. I think continue doing the amazing work that you guys are doing and advocating for the work. It's a goodbye, good afternoon, good night to whoever's watching from wherever. But most importantly, a huge thank you and a Simuniese Sonke from our side, because we are one in all of this. And I don't want to say fight, I don't want to use that kind of word, negative language, but in this kind of journey and pathway to destigmatizing and normalizing this. I think, thank you to everyone.
Thank you again, and bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Andre. Bye.
Thank you, Imo. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.